Hello, welcome to the Audaci-tea. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Janani and I make commentary videos on Instagram around pop culture and patriarchy through the Bollywood lens. And today I'm doing this new segment called the Audaci-tea because if you're coming from my Instagram, you know that I do a Q&A segment on my stories. Through that Q&A segment, I realized that a lot of people had wanted a lot of advice or were just ranting or just like wanted to talk to someone, get another opinion. And I really wanted to talk to you guys. You know, sometimes I feel like friends can give you the kind of advice that you want to hear, but not the kind of advice you need. So I thought that we should have a place where you can send in more stories or more details and even send in a voice recording and I can respond to it. So I put in a submission form on my Instagram for you guys to submit your stories. And I got quite a few submissions, which honestly, I am so humbled by, and I'm gonna try to do it the best justice. With that being said, let's get into the first tea. My husband of 11 years doesn't celebrate anniversaries or birthdays anymore. He gets me flowers for every occasion though. I am a stay-at-home mom. If he doesn't celebrate at least in a small way, like taking me out for lunch, is this marriage still worth living in? I don't have the guts to go out of it just because I am dependent on him. He also doesn't make up if I am angry, sad, etc. and goes weeks and months without talking to me. He only mellows down if he's desperate for sex. I can already understand while saying all of this loud that I pity myself. Never imagined a life like this. Wish people do such characters in movies for awareness. Why is there always a good side of marriage and birthing? Who's going to tell the other side? Thanks for reading if you did. I am so sorry that you're in this marriage. I think what's really standing out to me here is that a lot of Indian men just never learn how to care for their partner. I feel like in a lot of Indian families, they're just raised to believe that all they have to do is find a wife and then that's it. Like they don't have to cherish the relationship. They don't have to make efforts for the relationship. Like I think a lot of men in general, not just Indian men, are raised to believe that all they need to do is exist and they don't really know how to cherish their wife. They've not really learned the skills how to cherish a relationship. And I'm just realizing that as we're growing as a society, a lot more women are expecting that and a lot more men are not understanding how to give women that. And that's because no one has taught them or no one has even, helped them understand what it takes to be a husband. That being said, I'm not married. I've never been married, so I can't speak to marriages, but I do understand your frustration because I think celebrating small things like birthdays and anniversaries, they mean a lot. And not just to women, like I feel like we get this like stupid reputation, like shit like getting us flowers matters, but it does. Like those things are, and it's not just getting us flowers, it's doing the small things. It's celebrating and connecting with us on like these smaller things that really help us feel connected in the relationship. And I kind of hate that your husband is just thinking that he's done his duty by getting you flowers. I do want to ask if you've communicated with him about this, if this is something that you have brought up, but it feels like from what you're telling me that you kind of have, and he just doesn't feel like it's that important because it's not important to him. And if that's the case, that really does suck. From what you're telling me, it also seems like he's the kind of guy that doesn't know how to verbally communicate, which really is a big ick of mine. And a lot of guys are like this, and it doesn't help saying that a lot of guys are like this, that they don't know how to like communicate basic emotions, and that he only mellows out when he wants something, and in this case it being sex, which makes you feel really shitty and like makes you feel like you're just being used for whatever he needs, but then the moment you have any needs, it just doesn't work out. So I don't understand, why men find it so hard to just make someone feel special. Like, I think there's also a culture in Indian families where it's emasculating to feel like that, like to be the guy who cherishes his wife or celebrates his wife. It's like emasculating to them, which I never really understood. Because it's like, that's why I love like a Vicky Kaushal or a Ranveer Singh, because I love a man who simps over his woman. Like, it's just so cute. Okay, there is obviously the performative kind, but I hate that people even think it's performative, because what's performative about loving your wife? I don't know. I think that's like the cutest way that a man can be masculine. Like, I find that men who are showing up for their wives, who do things for their wives, I find them more masculine than I find guys who are like macho and like don't even hug their wife or love their wife or, you know, hold her hand. Like, I just find that so stupid. So I can understand your frustration, because like, what the heck, man? After 11 years of being married, that you don't want to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. Birthdays are a big deal. Because you've been resentful for so long, I do think that maybe couples therapy is something that would be beneficial, because the thing is, I think that sometimes there needs to be a mediation and, you know, someone who can help bridge the communication gap and like convey your resentment and frustration. But I do want to say that like, this is very basic stuff. Like, this is just, it just sucks to say that like a man to make you feel special by taking you out for lunch, it's not asking for a lot. I think you're so right when you talk about how people don't talk about the sort of darker sides of marriage. Nobody talks about like the realities of marriage, and everyone just talks about how beautiful and amazing it is. And I agree, because I think to a large extent, people have just pedestalized marriages and not given us the actual tools to understand what it's like to be in a relationship and in a marriage, and how it's important to cherish each other. It's important to look after the relationship, to prioritize the relationship, to prioritize your needs. And needs are not just sexual and like companionship. Like, there's a lot more needs. And I do think that from your story here, your needs are very simple. They're very basic. Like, you just want to feel cherished, and you're not feeling cherished. And after 11 years, again, like, I haven't been married. I haven't even been in a relationship for as long as you have. But I can imagine that it starts to get routine and it starts to get mundane, and you just become such a part of each other's lives that you don't actually have the need to kind of court each other anymore. And it's, you know, you have children, you have priorities, you have other, you know, things that are happening around you guys that you have to take care of. And I think it can easily let the relationship sort of just take a back seat, you know. I think it's important to prioritize the relationship, whatever that looks like for you guys. And from what you've said, it feels like you just want like to feel cherished on special days and to feel important to him. And I think that's a very basic need. But I think what could help is prioritizing time with each other and maybe doing something that you guys like to do together. And like, that's a non-negotiable, whether that's, I don't know, taking a tennis class together, if it's learning something new, or just, you know, on the weekends, the children go to a relative or, you know, go to a friend's house to stay. And that weekend is just the two of you and you do whatever you want. Like, if sex is something that is, you know, a big priority for him, maybe it can be a sexual thing, who knows? But I do think that really being intentional about carving time out for each other, and not necessarily just making it waiting for birthdays and anniversaries. Over the course of the weeks, I feel like being intentional about connecting with each other is something that doesn't need to happen when it's a special occasion. I feel like it needs to be like part of the routine. Again, this is coming from someone who has never been married. So take whatever I have to say that applies to you and leave what doesn't apply to you, because I'm not a professional. But I do think that maybe making some intentional time for each other and finding something that you both enjoy, and finding a common ground with that. And I know it's going to feel fake in the beginning, and it's going to feel like kind of mechanical. Knowing Indian men, he's probably going to make fun of you. He's probably going to say something stupid. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to ask him, like, does this marriage mean anything to you? Does this relationship mean enough for you to want to make a change? And, you know, if that means just every weekend you go try a new place to eat, it really is the bare minimum. Like, if that's not something that he can give you, then yeah, I think it's worth considering reevaluating the marriage, and also communicating that to him, that if this isn't going to be part of something that, if your needs aren't going to be met, if this is something that he can't do, like if this bare minimum thing is something he cannot do, then yeah, I think it's absolutely fine to reconsider the marriage. And you have children together. So, it's not like even if you get divorced tomorrow that this relationship is just going to disappear. You're still going to have to co-parent. You're still going to have to figure out a lot of things. So, yeah, I really hope that works for you. I hope you can find a way to bring that into your routine, and always couples therapy. Just like always feel like that's just not talked about enough, that we need to get into couples therapy. Like I would get into couples therapy in the beginning of a relationship if I could. I hope that was helpful, P. Thank you for sharing your story. All right, on to our next T. I am newly married to my college friend, so his mom fired house help. Great start. I already know where this is going. I started doing dishes after the honeymoon, and one day or few days, she saw my husband doing it, and she went to my father-in-law, and he called me to tell me how we didn't make our son do an MBA for doing dishes. What? And he did it on his own when I wasn't well. And to top it off, whenever he does something for me, she has an issue. And the moment she goes to my husband and father-in-law and gaslights them, it's like they're hypnotized. She has extreme control over his mind and life, and I don't know how to deal with my husband like this. He thinks if I am not doing household chores while not having a job, I don't accept this as my house. For them, doing household chores equals to a good bahu. That do with perfection. Everyone has OCD, but his mom is evil. Girl. I had my first period after the wedding, and the first day I took some rest, and she said, "हमारे ज़माने में तो किसी को बताते भी नहीं थी, बस गोली खाई और काम किया." Damn. Job wali kaisi karti hongi. She insulted me in front of relatives. Also, we told her my father doesn't have that much money. His brother betrayed him while he was in the ICU and took all of his money and property. My dad is going through severe depression, heart problem, brain problems, etc. What the heck? This happens like in every Indian family. Like, I'm not saying that it's like the exact thing, but the theme of like property dispute and brothers backstabbing each other, like what is that? And we asked for court marriage and one function that we guys share expenses of. She said, "Isse zyada to isse kam wale kar lete hain." She doesn't let me eat what I want to eat, while she will eat what she wants to eat, of course. Make us eat old food and controlled every bit of me and this family. My husband took my stand multiple times, and she would brainwash him so bad and twist his thinking, and she wants me to do both ghar and job. And my husband would say my parents are God for me and gives me such an ick. I don't know what to do with him. That would give me an ick too. He is so emotionally enmeshed. The only heart he has on his phone is with his mother's name. Oh, wow. Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, I need a second with that, because Jesus, that's a lot of problematic things in one story. This is so nuts to me that this mother-in-law thing is in almost every Indian family, the whole narcissistic mother-in-law thing, which, like, if we really think about it, sure, there's like deeper roots to it. The women that were given no opportunities and they were, basically made to like get married at a young age, and their agency was taken from them. But I just still don't think that that's enough to be abusive to your daughter-in-law, which, by the way, I just think that whatever you're going through with this mother-in-law is abusive from what you've told me, from what I can tell from your story. What the actual shit is with Indian men and their mothers? Like, I don't understand it. I really don't fucking get it, because I just don't get why. What is it with mothers and sons in a patriarchal society that just creates like this weird Oedipus enmeshment that like women are dealing with everywhere? I mean, I'm still stuck on the fact that like the only person who has a heart emoji next to their name is his mom. maybe these guys should just marry their moms. This is again like how the fucking patriarchy really fucks us up, because a lot of sons become husbands for their mothers, and not like in the gross, disgusting real sense, but it's because their husbands, like the previous story that we talked about, neglect their wives so badly that their wives look for emotional fulfillment with their children. That can honestly be with a son or a daughter. Like I don't think this is, I think with men, it is more so. Like with sons, I think it's about a lot more prevalent, but they look for that kind of emotional security and dependence with their sons, that when a daughter-in-law comes into the picture, then it kind of becomes like your competition, and like you're taking her son away from her, and like, she's gonna have to compare herself to you and make you feel like a terrible, terrible person. And the fact that your husband has had to take care of his mom emotionally basically all his life, and now has no idea how to like separate himself from it, which I don't even know where to begin with this. It's so many layers to it. But I think I'm kind of done feeling like I should be okay with the lack of emotional intelligence and EQ that men lack, like that I should somehow adjust to it. Even if you do have that kind of a discussion, and even if you do talk about those things, these things are so culturally normalized in our society that I really don't fucking get it. I feel like the things that you've said about like your periods and getting your periods and firing the house help so that you do the bartans, it's like essentially they've married you to be a house slave, I guess. That's normal and that's okay in a lot of Indian households, because as a woman and as a bahu, you have to be submissive and subversive, and God forbid you don't want to have a job, or you don't have a job, then it's like, okay, well, if you don't have a job, then you need to do the housework. Like that's the freaking exchange of not doing a job. Household chores, I think, should be everyone's responsibility. I don't think it should just be the bahu's responsibility. That's just strange. But obviously in Indian households, that's not how it works, because that's just, you're not a good woman if you're not cleaning and cooking, and not just cleaning and cooking, but cleaning perfectly and cooking perfectly, and just being there at their beck and call, and essentially being the help of the house. Assuming that this woman is a narcissistic woman, which kind of feels like she could be, because of how she's trying to get everyone on her side. And the thing about these women is that they're so problematic. They become like what everyone needs to cater to. Like their emotions become central to what everyone is gonna do. And you got to take care of their emotions first, and then and only then can you take care of your own emotions. But usually their emotions eclipse everyone's need. Like no one else can have a different need. No one else can have or do anything that they don't think is permissible. As far as it goes with standing up against your mother-in-law and like, her basically constantly comparing herself to you, saying that, you shouldn't talk about having your periods, or, you're supposed to not let him do the dishes, which it's like he did it out of his own accord. Like he wanted to do the dishes, whether you were ill or not. Like it should be equal responsibility doing the dishes. It's not like, he's, first of all, the MBA to dishes ratio, like it's such bullshit, because anyone who has, gone to college or, studied, just, you gotta have to take care of yourself. Like that's basic human skill. Like you gotta learn how to cook, clean, do your laundry, make your bed. Like these are basic life skills that everyone should be able to do. This is not something that only a wife is supposed to do, and the husband who has an MBA is gonna work and earn money. Like that's so archaic and so stupid, because like, okay, if he's done the MBA, he better be earning a lot of money to be able to hire house help. But obviously, the fact is that she's even fired the house help so that she gets you to do it, which makes me feel like this is intentional and abusive. Her idea of getting you to do it is to control you and not actually to not hire help. This is such, manipulative behavior. And if you hold her accountable or say anything, she's going to make it about how you're not a good wife. I'm curious if one of the solutions here is moving out, like if you guys like separated yourselves from this entire situation and lived elsewhere. I know that's easier said than done because God forbid that in-laws, let their children or parents let their children stay separately, because that's not Indian families and that's not how you love each other or show care for each other, which I think is such a load of horseshit. Because any couple wants his independence. And unless it's, a circumstance where someone is ill and requires taking care of, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to live separately and have your own life. So I think maybe that's like one thing to consider. But I 100% want to validate that this woman is crazy. Like, your mother-in-law is psychotic and not fucking... This is not a new story, which is what really gets to me. Like, I'm shocked that this is such a common story that I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what the way out is, because the way out of this is not getting married to these guys. And the thing is that this is like 80% of Indian men. And I don't really understand what the fuck? Honestly, the emotional enmeshment is not your problem, especially the one that he has with his mom is not your problem. And now it is becoming your problem, especially living in this house, being his wife, being their daughter-in-law. Like, now it's becoming a situation where you're going to have boundaries. And I know I'm saying it as if it's the easiest fucking thing to do in Indian families. The hardest thing in India, ironically, is to have boundaries. And I do think that you don't need to bear with this. You don't need to put up with this. And if you are just recently married, I think now is maybe a better time than ever to establish your boundaries. And some of the boundaries will be flexible. Like, maybe you're okay doing the dishes, but that doesn't mean that you're expected to do them. Maybe you're okay doing the cooking on a weekend, or maybe you're okay doing a chore that like no one else wants to do and you're good at. Whatever it is, I think those are okay boundaries to have. And yeah, I definitely think no one can function without house help. Like, you can, but it's hard. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. And if your husband is paying for it, what's her problem? I think having those boundaries is important. I think enforcing those boundaries is equally important. You're an equal part of this family and you deserve respect. If you're going to be married into this family, there needs to be space for you. And if there's not going to be any space for you, then you're going to have a talk with your husband about what this relationship's future looks like. But I do think that having those boundaries and not being taken for granted is important to establish. And you can reinforce those how many ever times you need to. And you can ignore her tactics how many ever times you need to. Like, you gotta fucking fight your place in this family. You can't let an abuser win. For her, she just wants to get under your skin. Like, she wants to be the most important person. And the best way to deal with someone who is like that and wants to be the most important person is to not give them importance at all. So, okay, so this is going to be the last cup of tea for today. Somehow all of these have been about marriages. So, yeah, I'm in a marriage with a narcissist husband with 2 little kids. I'm so done with him that I don't even like his presence in the home or even see his face. I would love to go for a divorce, but I'm very scared because I'm living alone abroad with no friends or family here and old parents in India. Judgments of people, and more importantly, I'm staying for the financial reasons. Not sure it is the right reason to stay, and also don't know that I can manage on my own with kids and future. There are so many scenarios and situations where he's controlling and dominating that I know they are very wrong on so many levels that I don't want to explain. Please help me out or give an advice of what and how I can handle this. This is difficult because it's one thing to be married and discuss divorce, but it's another thing to have 2 little children and also be financially dependent on someone and be abroad. and have no resources. But I think what's important for me to say here, and I think this is something that it might come from a privileged place as someone who is not married and who isn't financially dependent on a man. But I think that people's judgment should be the last reason why you stay in an abusive situation. I don't think you're doing your children any good. I don't think you're doing yourself any good. I don't think you're doing, more importantly, yourself any good by staying in an abusive situation just because of what people will think. I think that's really not a good enough reason. I think that's really not a good enough reason to stay in a marriage that's abusive. I don't mean to sound like to sound like a platitude, but you can figure it out, whatever it is, getting a job, getting financial help, getting married again, whatever it is, but you do not need to sustain and stay in an abusive relationship. And I know this sounds too simplistic. If you're reaching a point where you feel like he's done things, and you've not mentioned a lot of the things that he's done, so I'm going to base it off of the assumption that there is enough for you to consider getting a divorce. I don't think you should judge yourself for wanting to stay for the financial reasons. I think that's a very practical kind of reason to stay with someone, just because you have 2 children and it's hard to make that decision because you're also going to involve your children in this decision that you make. You say that there are so many scenarios and situations where he's controlling and dominating that I know they're very wrong on so many levels that I don't want to explain. I think if you've identified important things here, that you can't stand him, that he isn't the right person for you, that he is abusive, narcissistic, is doing things and controlling you, and you can't tolerate it, I think that's pretty good enough signs to want to get out of it. If I would suggest therapy, that feels like you're kind of past that point from what I understand from your message, because I feel like with this person, looks like you've tried everything and it's just reaching a point where you're just done. I think that having a kind of a fallback plan. Right now, my immediate suggestion would be to get support. I don't know if you want to rush into the decision of getting a divorce or, all of that I leave up to you. But I do think what you need right now is support. Looks like he's the kind of person who has isolated you from people. I don't want to assume, but I'm assuming here. I think you want to find friends wherever you are, however you can find friends, whether that's going to a class, whether that's, reaching out to neighbors, however you can look for people that you can kind of connect with, even other Indians in that area. I bet there's like Indian communities that do a lot of festivals, like during festivals. If that's somewhere that you can reach out to, I think it's important you get that support first. And I think go from there to kind of make the decision that you want to. Because I don't think it's helpful. That could even be like other parents of, your kids as friends as parents, and really making it a point to make friends and get that support system and feel a bit more empowered, and go from there with kind of deciding what you want to do in the future of this relationship. Because as you said, there's so many factors to think about. And I know this isn't an easy thing. I don't mean to, simplify the issue. I don't mean to simplify the issue here at all. But I do think that you need people on your side and you need to feel a bit more empowered. And if that looks like making practical decisions about your future, with the idea, let's say, hypothetically, that you've decided to end this relationship. But I know that before ending the relationship, you want to have a few fallbacks, and that includes financial independence and also how you're going to take care of your children, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have to co-parent with this guy. And I know that's not a very simple situation. But I do think that a lot of times, a lot of Indian women are put in this circumstance because they're not empowered financially themselves, and they haven't learned how to be, haven't been given the opportunity, haven't, given the chance to figure out how to be. I say this knowing that I say this with a lot of caution, that getting a support system, figuring out what you want to do, what you're passionate about in life, you can do that whether you're within this marriage or outside of this marriage. I think what you need is a support system that helps you get there. And right now you don't have that support system. So that support system could also happen when you move back home, if you want to move back home. It's difficult for me to give you the best advice here because I'm not a parent and I don't know how it is to make these decisions that involve children. But I do think that you kind of have to put yourself first and take care of yourself, because I know even from, my parents, the more they took care of themselves, the better parents they showed up for me and my sister. So I do think that that's something that I always think about when it comes to raising children. So if that looks like getting out of an abusive situation, is probably the best thing for your children. But before getting out of that abusive situation, to make sure that you have your needs met, your basic needs, your money, shelter, like food, shelter, and income. I think having those covered first, and also community. So friendship, food, income, shelter. I think once you have those sorted, I feel like you're in a better place to make a decision for yourself. I guarantee if you're abroad, there's probably communities for women that are considering divorce even. There's definitely mental health resources wherever you are. And those mental health resources will have, different resources for women who are in your kind of situation. I'm assuming, because I don't know where you are abroad, but I'm assuming if it's like somewhere in America or Canada, even in some European countries, I think they have a lot of resources to help. And I think that's the first step that I would do, is reach out to these places and get that help, reach out to professionals, get those resources, and then make a decision. I also think one thing that's important to say is, you're not going to be less of a person if you get divorced. You're not going to be a bad mom. You're not going to be a bad human being. You're not going to be a bad woman. And you're not going to be a failure. Even though it feels like it's going to be a failure, you're not a failure. I don't think divorce is a failure. I think it's relationships end. We should know going into relationships that they could end. People change, people grow, people show themselves and who they are later on in relationships that you never really saw when you first fell in love with that person. So humans make mistakes. There's always error to consider when you're thinking about relationships. And this is not on you. You are not a failure. And I just hope that all of you who have sent in your messages today, all of you who are married and who are possibly considering divorce, know that it's not a failure. And you deserve to be in marriages that are happy and satisfying, and that you love, and that you feel loved in, and that your children feel loved in, and that you're cherished and you're taken care of. Like, these are very, very basic requirements, so one would think, in marriages. And it just sucks that none of y'all have been given that. And it really does suck that men aren't able to show up for their wives, and families aren't able to show up for their wives. And the thing is, if no one else is showing up for you, the one person that 100% definitely, without fail, needs to show up for you is you. Because the thing is, we're always constantly fighting the patriarchy. We're fighting expectations. We're fighting all of this, bullshit that they put on us. And if we're not going to be able to stand behind in our own, corner, then it's just going to be people taking advantage of us left and right. Like, people are just going to get what they want from us because it's expected, because that's what good women do. And I really hate the idea of moralizing abuse and just saying that, I can say this or I can treat you this way because you're a daughter-in-law and you're a wife, and that's why, you can be treated in this way. That's such a load of bullshit. I think that's abusive disguised as morality and values. And I am not someone who subscribes to that. There's never going to be an ideal time, an ideal situation to put yourself first. But I think it's important to put put yourself first regardless. And I know this is very difficult for Indian women, especially because we're taught to be the sacrificing ones. We're taught to be the ones that are making, you know, everyone else's life easy at the expense of our own. And I think that shit should stop. I don't really think that that's fair to us. I don't think that makes us show up as good mothers or good wives or good daughter-in-laws. I really just don't understand why we're not expected to have any needs when having needs is the most human, normal part of being a human. But of course, they don't see us as humans, they see us as objects. So what's new? Anyway, that concludes the Audacity for this video. I have a lot more submissions that I'm going to go through and answer. So if you want to stay tuned, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm also going to link the Audacity form down in the description, and it's also on my Instagram bio if you want to submit your query, rant, advice, something that you want to discuss. Definitely submit it there. It's all anonymous. I'm not going to know who it is at all. There's no email collection, nothing. Just want to say that again. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sending in your stories. I hope I was helpful in some small way, and I hope I gave you maybe some perspective, some advice, something that you can take away that's of some small value. And if not, at least I hope I entertained you. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next Audaci-tea episode. Till then, you can follow me on Instagram for more content like this, or you can hit subscribe to keep up with more. I will see you guys in my next video. Take care and goodbye.